At 4:45 a.m. on a fog-shrouded Tuesday morning, long shadows stretched across the sprawling tarmac at Los Angeles International Airport as the first wave of flights prepared for another day of international departures. The pre-dawn hours at LAX's private aviation terminal were always the busiest, with wealthy executives and celebrities departing for business meetings and luxury vacations around the globe. Ramp supervisor Carlos "Snake" Mendoza walked his regular inspection route past Gate 73 in Terminal 4, where a pristine Gulfstream G650 business jet sat gleaming under the harsh sodium lights that illuminated the executive aircraft parking area. The sleek white aircraft, registration number N847GS, was scheduled for a high-priority charter flight to Zurich, carrying Harrison Matthews, a senior partner at Goldman Sachs, along with various cargo containers marked as diplomatic pouches and luxury goods requiring special handling procedures. Before I walk you through the full story, I just have a small favor to ask. Make sure to subscribe to the channel, hit that like button, and let me know in the comments, what city are you watching from? It's always amazing to see how far this audience is reaching. Carlos approached the aircraft's main landing gear with practiced nonchalance, greeting the overnight maintenance crew and fuel technicians who were completing their pre-flight preparations. As he conducted his routine safety inspection, Carlos casually slipped his right arm into the main wheel well housing, his fingers probing behind the hydraulic lines until they located the concealed access panel that he and his co-conspirators had installed during the previous night's maintenance window. Behind that panel, packed in waterproof Pelican cases and cushioned with military-grade shock-absorbing foam, lay $6 million worth of uncut diamonds stolen from various jewelry exchanges across Southeast Asia. A yellow freight cart labeled "Luxury Goods Fragile, Handle with Extreme Care" rolled past Carlos's position. Operated by a veteran baggage handler named Rodriguez, who had worked the executive terminal for 15 years, without ever suspecting that his supervisor was involved in international diamond smuggling. Rodriguez had no idea that $30 million in stolen precious stones were hidden just 3 feet beneath the aircraft he was helping to service, concealed in custom-fabricated compartments that were invisible to even the most sophisticated detection equipment used by customs agencies worldwide. Later that afternoon, Swiss customs agents at Zurich International Airport would spend over 4 hours methodically searching every inch of the Gulfstream's passenger cabin, inspecting each leather seat, examining the aircraft's galley and lavatory facilities, and using advanced X-ray equipment to scan the cargo compartments in the belly of the aircraft. They would deploy drug-sniffing dogs trained to detect traces of narcotics, explosives, and even currency, but they would never think to examine the wheel wells, which were considered mechanical components outside the scope of standard contraband searches. 48 hours earlier, Carlos Mendoza had worked as a senior ramp supervisor at Los Angeles International Airport for 8 years, managing ground operations for private and charter aircraft in the exclusive executive terminal that catered to Fortune 500 executives, Hollywood celebrities, and foreign dignitaries who required the highest levels of security and discretion. After completing his distinguished service as an Air Force aircraft maintenance specialist, where he had earned his nickname Snake for his ability to navigate through tight spaces in aircraft mechanical systems, Carlos joined LAX's ground operations division and quickly established himself as one of the most competent and reliable supervisors in the facility. His position gave him unrestricted access to secure areas throughout the airport, detailed knowledge of customs inspection procedures, and supervisory authority over a team of 23 ground crew members who handled everything from fuel services to baggage loading for high-profile passengers who valued punctuality and absolute confidentiality above all other considerations. Carlos's annual salary of $65,000, supplemented by overtime pay and performance bonuses, would have provided a comfortable middle-class lifestyle for most people. But it wasn't nearly enough to cover the catastrophic medical expenses that had been accumulating over the past 2 years. Carlos's elderly parents, Miguel and Rosa Mendoza, both suffered from serious health conditions that required expensive treatments not fully covered by Medicare or their supplemental insurance policies. Miguel had been diagnosed with Parkinson's disease and needed specialized medications that cost $3,000 monthly, while Rosa was undergoing dialysis treatment for kidney failure that required regular sessions at a private clinic charging $800 per treatment. Additionally, Carlos's younger sister Maria was fighting an aggressive form of breast cancer that had metastasized to her lymph nodes, requiring experimental chemotherapy protocols that cost $8,000 per month and were not covered by her insurance plan through the restaurant where she worked as a manager. To cover these medical expenses, Carlos had borrowed $40,000 from Tommy the Fish Castellano, a loan shark who operated out of a seafood restaurant in San Pedro and charged 20% interest monthly on all loans. The debt had grown exponentially over 18 months to more than $70,000, and Castellano's collection team was making increasingly aggressive demands for immediate payment, including threats against Carlos's family members and warnings that his continued employment at the airport might be jeopardized if word of his gambling debts reached airport security officials. Carlos had also been promised a promotion to terminal operations manager, a position that would have increased his annual salary by $30,000 and provided better health insurance coverage for his family. However, budget cuts imposed by the airport authority had eliminated the position entirely, leaving Carlos trapped in his current job with no prospects for advancement and mounting financial pressures that seemed impossible to resolve through legitimate means. The stress of his financial situation was destroying Carlos's personal relationships and affecting his mental health. He had developed chronic insomnia and was drinking heavily after each shift, trying to numb the constant anxiety about his family's deteriorating health and the growing threats from Castellano's enforcers. His girlfriend of 2 years had ended their relationship after discovering the extent of his debts, and he was avoiding friends and colleagues who might ask questions about his obvious emotional distress. Last Tuesday evening, as Carlos finished his shift and walked toward the employee parking garage, he was approached by Victor Lau, a well-dressed Asian man in his 50s, who emerged from a black Mercedes S-Class sedan and introduced himself as the representative of an international jewelry importing business based in Hong Kong. Lau was wearing an expensive Italian suit and Swiss watch, and he carried himself with the confidence of someone accustomed to making multi-million-dollar business decisions on a daily basis. "I'm Mr. Mendoza. I hope you don't mind the intrusion," Lau said in precise English with a slight British accent that suggested expensive private school education. "I've been observing your work routine for several weeks, and I'm very impressed by your professional competence and your access to secure areas of this facility. I represent certain business interests that require discreet transportation services for valuable merchandise, and we believe you might be interested in a mutually beneficial business arrangement." Carlos immediately suspected that Lau wasn't talking about legitimate jewelry imports, but the man's polished appearance and articulate manner suggested this wasn't some crude street-level criminal operation. Lau appeared to be a sophisticated international businessman, operating at the highest levels of global commerce, albeit in markets that existed outside the boundaries of legal regulation and government oversight. "I'm not sure I understand what you're proposing," Carlos replied carefully, trying to maintain the pretense that this might be a case of mistaken identity, while his mind raced through the potential implications of Lau's approach. Lau smiled knowingly and gestured toward his Mercedes. "Perhaps we could continue this conversation in a more private setting. I have a business proposition that could resolve your current financial difficulties permanently." During the 20-minute drive through the industrial areas surrounding LAX, Lau outlined his proposal with the precision of someone who had clearly spent considerable time developing every aspect of the operation. His organization needed to transport extremely valuable merchandise from Los Angeles to various European destinations using methods that would avoid standard customs inspection procedures and the sophisticated detection equipment used by international law enforcement agencies. "We're prepared to offer you $2 million up front, with an additional $30 million upon successful completion of the transportation operation," Lau explained as they sat in his Mercedes overlooking the Pacific Ocean from a secluded parking area in Manhattan Beach. "The merchandise consists of uncut diamonds and rare gemstones that require special handling procedures and absolute secrecy throughout the transportation process." Carlos felt his pulse quicken as he processed the numbers. $32 million would not only eliminate his debts to Tommy Castellano and cover his family's medical expenses for decades, but would also allow him to disappear from Los Angeles permanently and establish a new life somewhere beyond the reach of loan sharks and collection agencies. "What exactly would my role be in this operation?" Carlos asked, abandoning any pretense of ignorance about Lau's true business. "The diamonds would be concealed in aircraft wheel wells using custom-designed compartments that are completely invisible to standard inspection methods used by customs agencies," Lau replied. Your job would be to coordinate the installation of these concealment systems and ensure that our merchandise reaches its destination without detection. Lau proceeded to explain the technical details of the smuggling method with the expertise of someone who had clearly spent years perfecting this approach. Customs agents routinely inspected passenger cabins, cargo holds, and even engine compartments when they suspected contraband smuggling. But wheel wells were considered mechanical areas that fell outside the scope of contraband searches. The diamonds would be sealed in waterproof containers and hidden behind false panels that appeared to be standard aircraft components manufactured by the original equipment supplier. The beauty of this transportation method is that wheel wells are only accessible when aircraft are on the ground with their landing gear extended. Lau continued, his eyes gleaming with professional pride in the elegant simplicity of the concealment system. During flight, the compartments are completely sealed and protected from temperature variations, pressure changes, and mechanical stress. Upon landing at the destination airport, my associates can retrieve the merchandise during routine ground operations without attracting any attention from airport security or customs officials. Carlos thought about Maria's rapidly deteriorating condition, the mounting medical bills that arrived daily, and the increasingly violent threats from Tommy Castellano's collection team. His sister's oncologist had warned that without immediate access to the experimental treatment protocols, she had less than 6 months to live. The insurance company had denied coverage for the treatment, claiming it was still considered experimental despite promising results in clinical trials. "What guarantees do I have that payment will be made as promised?" Carlos asked, trying to maintain some semblance of professional skepticism, while his desperate financial situation made it almost impossible to refuse any opportunity for such a massive payday. $2 million will be wire transferred to an offshore account in your name tonight before you leave this parking lot, Lau replied confidently, producing a smartphone and accessing what appeared to be a sophisticated banking application. The remainder will be deposited within 12 hours of successful delivery. Additionally, we provide comprehensive technical support through qualified personnel who are already working at LAX and have been part of our operation for several months. This revelation caught Carlos by surprise. Lau was claiming that other airport employees were already involved in diamond smuggling operations, suggesting that the criminal organization's infiltration of LAX was far more extensive than Carlos had imagined. The scope of the operation implied significant financial resources and careful long-term planning that went far beyond opportunistic criminal activity. Lau revealed that Dr. Eduardo "Doc" Ramirez, an avionics technician who performed specialized maintenance on charter aircraft at the executive terminal, was already part of the smuggling operation. Doc had advanced training in aircraft electronic systems and could temporarily disable wheel well sensors and monitoring equipment to prevent detection of the hidden compartments during the installation and loading process. Additionally, Jade, a cargo manifest clerk in the Customs Coordination Office, would handle all documentation and paperwork to ensure that the smuggling operation appeared completely legitimate to customs officials and airport security personnel. Carlos knew both Doc and Jade from his daily work coordinating ground operations at the executive terminal. Doc was widely regarded as one of the most skilled avionics technicians at LAX, with specialized expertise in the electronic systems used by modern business jets. He had unrestricted access to aircraft maintenance areas and could modify aircraft systems without triggering security alerts or leaving traces that could be detected during routine inspections. Jade worked in the Customs Coordination Office that processed all international flight documentation, including cargo manifests, passenger lists, and customs declarations. She had detailed knowledge of inspection procedures and could manipulate shipping paperwork to ensure that specific aircraft or cargo containers would be exempted from detailed searches. If both Doc and Jade were already part of the operation, the diamond smuggling would be virtually undetectable using standard law enforcement methods. "How many other airport employees are involved in this operation?" Carlos asked, beginning to understand that he was being recruited into a sophisticated criminal enterprise that had been operating successfully for an extended period. "That information is compartmentalized for security reasons," Lau replied smoothly. "You only need to know about the people you'll be working with directly on this specific operation. The fewer details you have about our overall business activities, the safer everyone involved will be if law enforcement agencies become suspicious." Wednesday morning, Carlos checked his new offshore bank account and found that exactly $2 million had been deposited overnight by wire transfer from a financial institution in the Cayman Islands. The transaction documentation listed the source as Pacific Rim Import-Export Consulting, a company that appeared completely legitimate and would be virtually impossible for law enforcement agencies to trace back to any criminal organization. Carlos immediately transferred $200,000 to Miami Children's Hospital to cover the deposit required for Maria's experimental cancer treatment, and he used another $100,000 to make a substantial payment to Tommy Castellano, buying himself time and reducing the immediate threats against his family. The remaining money was distributed among various medical creditors and collection agencies, eliminating the most pressing financial obligations that had been causing him severe stress for months. That evening, Carlos met with Doc Ramirez at a private aircraft maintenance hangar located in a remote section of LAX that was used primarily for specialized maintenance on luxury charter aircraft and private jets owned by celebrities and business executives. The hangar was operated by a shell company that provided Lau's organization with a secure location for modifying aircraft without attracting attention from airport security or federal aviation authorities who monitored maintenance activities at commercial facilities. Carlos, I want you to understand exactly how this concealment system works, Doc explained, showing detailed engineering diagrams of the Gulfstream G650's landing gear configuration that had obviously been prepared by aerospace engineers with extensive technical knowledge of modern business jet designs. Each main wheel well has sufficient internal space for custom storage compartments that can be installed behind false panels without interfering with the aircraft's hydraulic systems, electrical wiring, or structural components. Doc had fabricated the false panels using aerospace-grade aluminum and composite materials that were identical in appearance and weight to the aircraft's original equipment. The panels could be installed and removed quickly using standard tools, and they included sophisticated electronic sensors that would report normal mechanical readings to the aircraft's computerized monitoring systems, preventing any indication that the wheel wells had been modified. The diamond storage compartments are lined with impact-resistant foam and sealed with waterproof gaskets to protect the merchandise from temperature variations, humidity, and mechanical vibration during flight, Doc continued, his voice carrying the confidence of someone who had tested this system extensively on previous operations. Even if customs agents somehow decide to inspect the wheel wells, which they never do, they would need specialized equipment and considerable technical knowledge to detect our concealment system. The storage compartments were designed to hold waterproof Pelican cases containing the diamonds, with each case secured by military-grade shock mounts that would prevent damage during takeoff, landing, and turbulence. The entire system had been tested using computer simulations and actual flight trials to ensure that it could withstand the mechanical stresses encountered during international flights. Wednesday night, Carlos met with Jade in Guyenne at an all-night coffee shop near LAX to coordinate the documentation aspects of the operation. Jade had worked in the Customs Coordination Office for 5 years and possessed encyclopedic knowledge of international trade regulations, inspection procedures, and the bureaucratic processes used by customs agencies to clear aircraft and cargo for international travel. I can create a maintenance override authorization that will prevent customs from conducting detailed mechanical inspections of the wheel wells, Jade explained, accessing her laptop and showing Carlos official airport documentation templates. The override will cite routine landing gear maintenance that requires the wheel wells to remain undisturbed during the standard customs inspection period. This will give us unrestricted access to the concealment compartments while keeping customs agents focused on other areas of the aircraft. Jade could also manipulate the timing of customs inspections to ensure maximum efficiency for the diamond loading operation. By scheduling the inspection during shift changes or meal breaks, she could guarantee that the customs team would be operating with reduced staffing and would be more likely to conduct abbreviated searches rather than comprehensive examinations of the entire aircraft. However, Jade also revealed personal motivations for participating in the smuggling operation that went beyond financial compensation. She and Carlos had dated seriously for 8 months 2 years earlier, and their relationship had ended acrimoniously when Carlos chose his family financial obligations over their romantic involvement. Jade felt that Carlos had used her emotionally and then discarded her when their relationship became inconvenient for his career advancement prospects. This operation gives me an opportunity to achieve financial independence while also settling some personal scores, Jade said, with a coldness that Carlos had never seen during their previous relationship. Don't mistake my professional cooperation for personal forgiveness. I'm participating in this because it serves my interests, not because I have any lingering feelings for you. Thursday afternoon, Victor Lau's associates delivered 6 military-grade Pelican cases to the secure storage facility adjacent to the private maintenance hangar. Each case contained approximately $5 million worth of uncut diamonds that had been stolen from jewelry exchanges, mining operations, and private collectors throughout Southeast Asia over the previous 18 months. The diamonds were completely untraceable and could be processed into legitimate jewelry once they reached Lau's distribution network in Europe. The diamonds included rare pink and blue stones from Myanmar, yellow diamonds from Australia, and classic white diamonds from various African mines. Many of the stones were of exceptional quality and size, including several pieces that would be worth millions of dollars each once they were professionally cut and polished by master craftsmen in Amsterdam and Antwerp. Thursday night, Doc and Carlos installed the concealment system in the designated Gulfstream G650 during a scheduled maintenance window that Jade had arranged through forged work orders and maintenance authorizations. The installation required 4 hours of precise work and temporarily disabling several electronic monitoring systems to avoid triggering security alerts that would bring airport security officials to investigate. The system is completely invisible to any standard inspection procedures used by customs agencies or airport security, Doc assured Carlos as they completed the final connections and tested the electronic components. The false panels are indistinguishable from original aircraft components, and our electronic sensors will report normal mechanical readings throughout the entire flight operation. The concealment compartments were positioned behind the main hydraulic lines in both wheel wells, making them accessible only to someone with detailed knowledge of the aircraft's configuration and the specific tools required to remove the false panels. Even experienced aircraft mechanics would be unlikely to discover the hidden compartments during routine maintenance procedures. Friday morning at 3 a.m., the diamond loading operation commenced under the cover of darkness and fog that provided natural concealment from any surveillance cameras or security patrols that might be monitoring the aircraft parking area. Carlos coordinated his ground crew activities to ensure that the wheel well area remained clear of other personnel during the critical 30-minute loading period when the aircraft would be most vulnerable to detection. The 6 Pelican cases were transferred from a specially modified service cart directly into the hidden compartments using a carefully choreographed sequence that minimized the time the wheel wells remained open. Each case was secured with shock-resistant mounting brackets and connected to environmental monitoring sensors that would alert the ground crew if temperature or humidity levels exceeded safe parameters during the flight. Jade handled all the associated paperwork, creating maintenance records, customs declarations, and flight documentation that would prevent any detailed inspection of the wheel wells or questions about the aircraft's mechanical systems. According to her carefully prepared documentation, the Gulfstream had undergone routine landing gear maintenance that required the wheel wells to remain undisturbed during the standard customs inspection process. The documentation is bulletproof, Jade assured Carlos as she finalized the electronic submissions to customs and airport security systems. I've created a complete paper trail showing legitimate maintenance activities that fully justify any restrictions on wheel well access. Customs will focus their attention on the passenger cabin and cargo compartments exactly as we planned. At 7:30 a.m., customs agents conducted their standard pre-flight inspection of the Gulfstream G650, following procedures that had been refined over decades of experience with international charter flights carrying high-profile passengers. They examined the luxurious passenger cabin thoroughly, checking every seat, examining the aircraft's galley and lavatory facilities, and using portable X-ray equipment to scan personal luggage and carry-on items. The inspection team also deployed drug-sniffing dogs, trained to detect traces of narcotics, explosives, currency, and even certain types of precious metals. But the dogs showed no interest in the wheel well areas, which were officially off-limits due to Jade's maintenance override authorization. The inspection was completed in 90 minutes and the aircraft was cleared for departure, with no indication that anything unusual had been detected. Harrison Matthews, the Goldman Sachs executive who was the flight's primary passenger, arrived at the terminal accompanied by his personal security detail and several associates who would be participating in high-level financial negotiations in Zurich. Matthews had no knowledge of the diamonds hidden in his aircraft's landing gear, and he spent the pre-flight period reviewing confidential documents related to a major international merger that his firm was orchestrating. The flight departed LAX at 9:15 a.m. Pacific Time, with the pilot and crew maintaining normal radio contact with air traffic control as they climbed to their assigned cruising altitude of 41,000 feet. The Gulfstream's flight plan called for a direct route across the United States, over the Atlantic Ocean, and into Swiss airspace, with an estimated flight time of 11 hours and 30 minutes, including favorable jet stream conditions. None of the flight crew had any knowledge of the diamonds concealed in their aircraft's landing gear, and the flight proceeded normally across the continental United States with no indication that the concealment system was affecting the aircraft's performance or mechanical systems. The false panels and electronic sensors were functioning perfectly, maintaining the illusion that the wheel wells contained only standard aircraft components. But DEA Special Agent Marina Torres in Los Angeles had been conducting a months-long investigation into suspicious financial transactions involving LAX personnel and potential connections to international smuggling operations. Her investigation had identified unusual banking activity in Carlos's offshore accounts, irregular maintenance schedules for charter aircraft, and communication patterns that suggested coordination between airport employees and unknown outside parties. When Torres noticed the Gulfstream's maintenance override authorization in the customs database, combined with Carlos's recent financial transactions and the aircraft's destination in Switzerland, she became deeply suspicious that a major smuggling operation was in progress. "Alert Swiss Customs and Interpol that we have a high-probability smuggling operation en route to Zurich," Torres ordered her investigative team. "I want that aircraft subjected to the most comprehensive inspection possible upon landing. Check everything: passenger cabin, cargo holds, mechanical systems, even the wheel wells if necessary." Torres also initiated contact with her counterparts in European law enforcement agencies, providing them with detailed intelligence about the suspected smuggling operation and requesting full cooperation in intercepting the diamonds before they could be transferred to Victor Lau's distribution network. At 35,000 feet over the Atlantic Ocean, Doc remotely monitored the wheel well environmental conditions using encrypted satellite communications that allowed him to track temperature, pressure, and humidity levels in the concealment compartments. The monitoring system was functioning perfectly, with all readings remaining within acceptable parameters to ensure the diamonds remained secure throughout the flight. Halfway across the Atlantic, Carlos received an encrypted text message from Victor Lau containing only the words, "Package secure. Proceed to rendezvous as planned." This message indicated that Lau's associates in Zurich were prepared to retrieve the diamonds immediately upon the aircraft's arrival, and that arrangements had been made to expedite the transfer without attracting attention from airport security or customs officials. However, as the Gulfstream approached European airspace and began its descent toward Zurich International Airport, an unauthorized electronic signal began transmitting from the vicinity of the wheel wells. The signal was being broadcast by a sophisticated GPS tracking device that had been secretly installed by Jade during the diamond loading operation, unknown to both Carlos and Doc. Jade had been recruited by a competing criminal organization based in Eastern Europe that intended to steal the diamonds for themselves rather than allow them to reach Victor Lau's distribution network. Her betrayal had been planned for weeks, and she had been providing detailed information about the smuggling operation to her new employers, while maintaining the appearance of loyalty to Lau's organization. The tracking signal allowed Jade's associates to monitor the aircraft's exact location and coordinate their theft operation with precise timing. They were prepared to intercept the diamonds during the ground transfer process, eliminating both Carlos and Doc as potential witnesses while keeping the valuable merchandise for their own criminal enterprise. Upon landing at Zurich International Airport at 6:45 p.m. local time, the Gulfstream was immediately surrounded by Swiss customs agents, airport security personnel, and Interpol investigators who had been alerted by DEA agent Torres. The customs team was equipped with advanced X-ray scanners, chemical detection equipment, and specially trained dogs capable of detecting precious metals and gemstones. Carlos watched in growing alarm from the airport terminal as customs agents began conducting an extraordinarily thorough inspection of the aircraft, examining not only the passenger cabin and cargo compartments, but also focusing significant attention on the mechanical systems, including the wheel wells that were supposed to be protected by Jade's maintenance override authorization. Doc attempted to remotely disable the false panels from his position in the terminal, using encrypted radio signals to trigger the concealment system's emergency release mechanism. However, he discovered that the manual release controls had been sabotaged, with the activation cables cut and the mechanical latches welded shut to prevent the compartments from being opened quickly. Someone had deliberately sabotaged the concealment system to ensure that the diamonds would be discovered by customs agents, destroying the entire smuggling operation while placing Carlos and Doc in immediate legal jeopardy. The sabotage had been performed by a skilled technician with detailed knowledge of the system's design and operation. At that moment, Jade emerged from the passenger arrival lounge accompanied by two men who were obviously not legitimate airport security personnel. They were wearing expensive suits and carrying themselves with the confidence of professional criminals accustomed to operating in high-stakes international environments. Jade approached Carlos with a cold smile that revealed the depth of her betrayal. "I'm sorry about this turn of events, Carlos," she said, holding up an electronic control device that appeared to be designed for operating the wheel well concealment system. "Victor Lau's organization offered me $3 million for this operation, but my current employers paid me $10 million to ensure that you and Doc would be eliminated and the diamonds would be transferred to their distribution network instead." The two men moved to escort Carlos toward a freight terminal exit, where a black van was waiting to transport him to an unknown location, presumably for interrogation and elimination. But Carlos had spent years working around aircraft emergency systems and had extensive knowledge of airport security procedures that could be used to summon immediate assistance. He discreetly activated a domestic violence emergency alert on his supervisor radio, broadcasting a coded signal that indicated a female airport employee was being physically assaulted in the terminal area. The emergency code was designed to bring immediate response from airport security, local police, and federal law enforcement agents who maintained a constant presence at major international airports. Within 30 seconds, airport security officers, Swiss federal police, and customs agents were converging on their location from multiple directions. The emergency response created enough chaos and confusion to disrupt Jade's carefully planned extraction operation. During the commotion, Doc managed to activate a backup release mechanism that he had installed as a fail-safe system, using a hidden manual override that bypassed the sabotaged electronic controls. The false panels in the wheel wells suddenly sprang open, and the 6 Pelican cases containing the diamonds tumbled onto the airport tarmac, creating a dramatic scene as millions of dollars worth of precious stones scattered across the ground under the glare of emergency floodlights and television news cameras that had arrived to cover the unfolding international incident. Swiss customs agents immediately secured the scattered diamonds, while airport security detained Jade and her 2 associates. The massive law enforcement response had effectively destroyed the diamond theft operation, while providing Carlos with an opportunity to escape from immediate danger. Carlos used the chaos to slip away through a service gate that led to the airport's cargo handling area, although he sustained a significant head injury during his physical struggle with one of Jade's enforcers. His knowledge of airport layouts and security procedures, gained through years of working at LAX, allowed him to navigate through restricted areas without being detected by the responding officers who were focused on securing the diamond evidence and arresting the known conspirators. The comprehensive investigation that followed revealed the full scope of the international diamond smuggling network and led to arrests of criminals throughout Europe, Asia, and North America. Victor Lau was detained in Dubai on an Interpol warrant based on evidence provided by Swiss authorities, while Jade and her Eastern European associates faced charges for international diamond trafficking, conspiracy, and attempted murder. The recovered diamonds were valued at over $30 million and were linked to theft operations spanning multiple continents and several years of criminal activity. The smuggling network had been responsible for some of the largest jewelry heists in recent history, including the theft of rare stones from museums, private collectors, and mining operations in Africa and Australia. Carlos was hospitalized in Zurich with a severe concussion, multiple lacerations, and internal injuries sustained during his escape from Jade's associates. However, Swiss authorities decided not to press criminal charges against him in exchange for his complete cooperation with their investigation and his willingness to testify against the other members of the smuggling organization. His detailed testimony provided crucial evidence that allowed prosecutors to dismantle the entire criminal network and recover millions of dollars worth of stolen property. Carlos's cooperation was particularly valuable because of his technical knowledge of the concealment methods and his access to financial records that revealed the full scope of the organization's operations. The Swiss court granted Carlos protected witness status and ultimately political asylum, recognizing that his return to the United States would place him in immediate danger from both law enforcement agencies seeking to prosecute him and criminal organizations seeking revenge for his cooperation with authorities. His testimony had effectively destroyed a major international criminal enterprise, but it also made him a permanent target for retaliation. The $2 million that Carlos had received from Victor Lau, minus the amounts he had already spent on medical bills and debt payments, was sufficient to pay off all his remaining obligations and provide financial security for his family for several years. Maria's experimental cancer treatment continued successfully at a private clinic in Switzerland, and their elderly parents received the medical care they needed through arrangements Carlos made with Swiss healthcare providers. But Carlos could never return to Los Angeles or resume his previous life under his real identity. He was now living under an assumed name provided by Swiss Witness Protection Services, working as a maintenance coordinator for a small regional airline that operated charter flights throughout Europe. The work was honest and relatively peaceful, but he remained constantly aware that his past could catch up with him at any time. The identity change had been comprehensive, including new documentation, background history, and even minor facial reconstruction surgery to alter his appearance enough to avoid recognition by former associates or criminal organizations seeking revenge. The Swiss government had invested considerable resources in ensuring his safety, recognizing the value of his continued cooperation in related investigations. 6 months after the diamond seizure in Zurich, Carlos received a call on a secure satellite phone that had been provided by Swiss authorities for emergency communications with their witness protection program. The voice on the other end was electronically distorted to prevent identification, but the message was unmistakably threatening. "We will meet again, Snake. The debt has not been forgotten, and neither has the betrayal." Carlos knew that the criminal organizations affected by the diamond smuggling investigation possessed the resources and determination to track him down eventually, regardless of how sophisticated his protective measures might be. International crime syndicates had institutional memories spanning decades and access to technology and personnel that rivaled government intelligence agencies. If you enjoyed this story, make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you never miss the next one.